Good morning and welcome to this session of Business Breeders, webinar series hosted by Goodman Group at Brock University. My name is Abdul Rahimi and it's my pleasure to serve as the director of Goodman Group here at Goodman School of Business. Goodman Group is a community-focused learning and development services provider that works to support professionals, businesses, and entrepreneurs pursuing growth through accredited professional development certificate programs, executive education, consulting services, and startup support. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to today's session as you take a break with us by taking part in this webinar. This webinar series aims to provide 45-minute breathers filled with insightful discussions on timely topics that are relevant to businesses and everyday lives, led by award-winning Brock University faculty and industry experts who encourage thoughtful debates and also keeping us feeling connected all together. This webinar series is hosted on Wednesdays from 11 to 11:45. In a moment, I'll hand over today's screen to our webinar lead, and that's Stephanie Barnes, joining us from Berlin, who will lead today's discussion. Stephanie will speak for approximately 30 minutes, and then we'll spend some time towards the back end answering your questions. So the chat feature is open. Please say hi to Cassie while you're there as well, and feel free to type in your questions and comments in the chat feature available to you. You may also post your questions and comments and feedback live on Twitter, and you can do so with using our handle. So that's at GSB Goodman Group. That's at GSB Goodman Group, all one word. At the end, I'll have some details about how you may access today's content, including recording and slides at a later date. But for now, allow me to introduce our speaker today, and that's Stephanie Barnes, who has many years of experience in knowledge management and accounting across multiple industries. She is a consulting management, she's a management consultant in her consulting practice. She focuses on aligning people, process, and technology to not only help organizations be more effective and efficient for what they know, but to be more innovative and creative at the same time. Stephanie is a Brock alum, and we're proud of her accomplishments over the many years, holding a BBA in accounting from Goodman and has an MBA in information technology as well. Stephanie, welcome to today's session.
Great, thank you, Abdul. I think I can skip this next slide, except to say that some of this material was actually published in a book called Knowledge Management Matters 2 years ago, and more of it will be published in articles that are published. One's published later on this month, and the other one is in 2021. So, and my superpower is using both sides of my brain. So the analytical process part of me comes from my education, and the creative comes from my art practice, which I've developed over the last 20 or so years. And I'd like to begin my workshops and webinars and meetings and things with a little activity to get us all centered and in the room and focused on what we're about to do. And so I'm going to do that today. I'm going to encourage you to get comfortable. I should say, if anyone is driving, you can't do this if you're driving because you need to close your eyes. So if you're driving, you'll have to do this later. But hopefully everyone's working at their home office, safe and sound. And so just take a second and get comfortable. Take a slow, deep breath and close your eyes. Picture in your mind's eye a small and delicate flower floating gently inside your skull, just behind the bone of your forehead. Notice the flower's color, its shape, the pattern of its petals. let the flower drift slowly downward, gliding gently down your throat into your rib cage. Drifting down and down between your lungs, downward, gently downward, coming to rest in the lowest place in your abdomen. The place your breath reaches when you breathe fully and deeply. A quiet touch of color deep in the darkness of your abdomen. Hold the flower there. Hold it. Hold it. Now let it go. Let the flower vanish. But stay focused on the place where it was, deep down in the dark center of you. Focus on the place where it was. Now, when you're ready, and only when you're ready, open your eyes and come back into the room. You've just experienced letting go. Please accept the idea that when you let go of the flower, you also let go of any notions or biases you held about where you thought this meeting or webinar would go or should go. Now, normally I would take a few minutes and we would talk about that experience for people. Lots of times people don't meditate regularly or have never meditated before, haven't done a guided meditation before. And so we would take a few minutes and talk about it and talk about people's experiences. I can't do that today because of the way the technology works, but I would encourage you to take a moment and share any thoughts that you had, any experiences that you had in the chat window. And when we do the questions at the end, we will come back around and share those reflections. You don't have to share reflections. If you want to, that's perfectly fine. But if you had an experience you would like to share, please feel free to type it in the chat window and we'll share them later on. So thank you for participating in that little exercise. I find that that it really helps people center and leave behind whatever they left at their desk or in work at home days in the kitchen or in the living room. So why do we need to relearn our creativity? We have spent so much time, and I speak from personal experience with this certainly too, so much time trying to plan every second and be very thoughtful and logical and dry out all the space, because if we're sitting not doing anything, then we're being lazy and we're not using our time to best advantage and all of these things. We treat our work in our lives like production lines that we're always supposed to be busy and not take any time out. And that's really old thinking. Most of us are doing knowledge-based jobs, so jobs that we need to think about, reflect on, and consider what might be the best way forward. And we can't do that if we don't stop and take a pause and reflect, but also just get out of that space and do something different too, especially when we have moments when we're stuck and can't focus on what we're doing. That's definitely a sign that we need to shift and relearning, reactivating our creativity through, whether it's through painting, like I do, or just going for a walk or exercising. And I have a list later on in the presentations. We'll talk more about that, different ways, different things to do. But bringing that balance back and getting out of the analytical and into the creative can have all kinds of benefits, not just for ourselves personally, but also for our organizations. So, and that the picture on the right side of the slide is one of my paintings, actually, from a series called Opening Up. And I used buttons and zippers in that series. It explores just that opening up, how we open up. And when I was starting the series, there's 10 paintings in that series. And when I was starting, I knew that was a theme that I wanted to explore. But I thought about different ways to, things that showed opening up or closing up, and how to show that and how to transfer that over into a painting. And so I ended up doing this whole series with buttons and zippers. And I've had curators ask me about the painting, where I saw that from, because certainly artists steal from each other, or borrow from each other. And I just said, I thought that up all on my own after some reflection and some consideration of the question. So innovation comes from that ability to reflect. So, and why do I say we need to relearn it? Relearn our creativity. There's lots of research out there. I like this study that was done, started a few years ago, actually 40 or 50 years ago. I think the first one was, but they keep running it and find that 5-year-olds, so when we're children, or if we have children, 90% or more demonstrated the creativity to suggest innovative ways of looking at situations and the ability to dream up new ideas. But by the time we reach 18, so by the time we're pretty much done school, that's all gone. We've only got 5% of people 18 and older that registered in the creative range. So we need to bring that in. We're working in organizations that are talking about things about being agile and design thinking, and those all require us to think outside the box and to reflect, and so doing things to reactivate that, so we're not stuck and just thinking it needs to go A, then B, then C all the time is really important. And this is a quote from Matisse that I like. I think it sums up well the reasons why we should be paying more attention and reactivating, relearning our creativity. Creative people are curious, flexible, and independent, with a tremendous spirit and love of play. We don't have to be serious all the time. We can have some fun. One of my favorite ways, or what worked really well for me and others, because there's research that backs this up, how can we reactivate our creativity? Taking on an artistic attitude, an artistic practice, that curiosity, tenacity, passion, having the confidence of trying things out. When I tried the zipper in my painting, I initially was hesitant to show it to anyone, but I had built up my confidence in my paintings over the years, and showed it in an exhibition just actually a couple of weeks after I'd finished the painting, and people reacted really well to it, which helped even more. But even if they hadn't, the resilience that built up through my artistic practice, that would have allowed me to go, oh, well, that's too bad. I don't like it. It's important for me. It means something to me, and that's what's important. And the artistic practice comes in art, but it comes in work things too. And whether we're talking about spreadsheets or marketing plans or whatever, perceiving, looking at what's available, what's out there, what the market wants, what our colleagues need, reflecting on the data that we've gathered, trying around different combinations of things, and performing, actually putting it out for our audience, whoever our audience may be. In the case of painting and artistic things, typically artistic things, I'm going to say, that could be a theater presentation, it could be an exhibition of painting, that could be all kinds of things. But from that, we learn, and we can go back, and the next time we do it, we can go through this cycle again and improve our performance. By tapping into our creativity, we are bringing our whole self to work. We're not leaving part of it at home or, you know, in the other room. We're all working from home now. I have the good fortune of having my office and my studio in my home. So 2/3 of the room is studio space and 1/3 is office space. It started out more like 50-50, but the studio is sort of slowly taking over a bit more of the office space. But that means I can, when I get stuck on a project or some work I'm doing, I can turn around and paint for a few minutes and remind myself, give myself some space to think about what it is that I'm stuck on the document or whatever it is I'm working on, and then go back to work. And that's, it's so nice to be able to bring my whole self to work and be my own, my authentic self, and to share that experience then with my clients and the people that I'm working with, whether it's in a client situation or just other people that I'm collaborating with, and talk about that experience and the things that I've learned. So being authentic and bringing your whole self is so freeing, and not being worried about, am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? It also allows us to build opportunities to build our skills for leadership for ourselves and for others, and bring others along with us, and help them be the best that they can be. It's important to important to promote creativity. It improves critical thinking. So, like I was saying with the painting with my zippers, I thought in a meaningful way about, well, how can I show that? How can I show how this works, how the idea of opening up. But that also transfers over then to the work that I do with my clients, and the work that I encourage them to do when they're back at their jobs, if they're in one of the workshops that I run. Question things. Think about where this comes from. What is it that you're trying to do? Which is why we get into talking about purpose so often. What are you really trying to do? Being focused like that helps us achieve our objectives more readily. It increases our motivation and concentration and engagement. The employee engagement that happens when we bring the creativity into the equation and support and bring that into our workplaces, it goes through the roof, because people feel like their contributions are matter, make a difference, and that they can bring all of them to the office, and it's appreciated. It improves our relationships, and most importantly, it develops our skills for life. We're all, especially with COVID, having to adapt to things on a daily basis, if not hourly sometimes. So tapping into our creativity and having a practice around that, whatever the practice is, helps with adaptability and coping with uncertainty and change. It helps build our resilience and our empathy. All good things, all very useful with what we're currently experiencing, certainly. So how do we become more creative? I like to say, I channel my inner child. And that's a picture of my niece and nephew when they were younger. My nephew has actually just started at Brock in computer science in first year. So that's exciting for him. So not that small anymore, but I think we have a lot to learn from children. As I said on that first slide, 5-year-olds, we're very creative. We need to tap into some of that and remember what that was like. So just playing and doing arts and crafts, things like even exercising or meditating, things that make us focus on what it is that we're doing in the moment. Doing improvisational games with our kids, with our friends, when we meet up. Do the improvising works on Zoom, on virtual meetings, so you can use them, do that kind of stuff there too. And even just things like getting enough sleep, being well rested makes such a difference to being creative and being able to bounce back when things don't go the way that we think they are, or they should. Eating and drinking consciously, so almost meditatively, paying attention to what the food tastes like, what it smells like, the texture of it, what the drink tastes like, what it smells like. Is it hot or is it cold? Just paying attention to that kind of thing, and making the space to do, these kinds of things, and to reflect, and just to sit with your mind. Daydreaming, I should add daydreaming and some other things onto this list. Gardening and cooking come into it as well. But things like meeting new people and asking them, having a conversation and asking them questions and learning about them. And that's one thing I like about the lockdown, actually, and the working from home that everyone's doing, is people have been much more willing to do virtual coffees. So I've met some great people doing virtual coffees, and reconnected with friends too. I've been in Berlin for 5 years, and it's been nice to be able to reconnect with some friends because they're home, working from home, and so we find a slot and we can talk and have that conversation and learn something from each other about each other's experiences. So doing something, connecting, whether it's new people or people you just haven't talked to in a long time, and doing something new or different. Again, it just broadens our experience and our empathy and the possibilities that we might think of. One of the things I like about being a self-taught artist is I don't know what the rules are. So I have a tendency just to go right past the rules because I don't know that I'm not supposed to do something that way. Like put zippers and buttons in my paintings. I love the reaction that I get from people when they realize what I've done and thrown the buttons and the zippers in, and they understand what they're looking at. So it's something new or different. Try to see what happens. In our organizations, we can do things like ask questions, challenge the assumptions. I do workshops so often that people say, oh, well, we've always done it that way. Well, why? And ask that. One of my favorite things to do with that, challenging assumptions and asking questions, is 5 whys, and really get at not only the root cause, but understand the situation, and allowing that space for reflection. Don't expect people to give an answer automatically and within 10 seconds. Give them the space to reflect and think about it. Let them think about it, reconvene, whether it's after a break or the next day or the next week. Sometimes people need time to think and reflect, especially on complex issues. Allow some space for creativity, and don't just jump into the meetings. And the next slide, I'm going to talk a bit more about things that we can do in our virtual meetings for creativity and things to help with engagement and help bring people in the room, sort of like the meditation we started off with. But do creative bursts. Take a break. When I first started doing this work, I brought scribble drawings into my requirements analysis workshops. And people kind of looked at me funny, but I persevered, and it was interesting the change that it had, not only on the energy in the room, and people relaxed and thought, well, maybe this isn't going to be so bad sitting in this workshop for 2 hours or 3 hours, doing requirements analysis. Maybe we're going to have some fun with this as well. But I also got some really interesting answers and thoughtful answers, because I got them out of their comfort zones and thinking about things differently. And then I did them at the end as well, these scribble drawings, and that really re-energized them to go back to their desks for the rest of the day, or if it was a workshop at the end of the day, to go home, so they weren't feeling completely exhausted and drained after 3 hours of strategy development or requirements analysis or whatever. And just experiment. Keep space in our organizations to experiment, to try something out, to say, you know what, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to try and see what happens. Try and learn, and trial and error is so important. Okay, so I said I was going to talk a bit about some things we can do in virtual meetings. They don't have to be deadly serious. We can do some fun things. People can buy some clown noses and have some fun, or I have hats beside my desk too. Sometimes I change hats just to see who's paying attention on the Zoom call. But we do things like little scribbled drawings or doodling and draw to music, take a few minutes. All of these can be done in 5 or 10 minutes, and it really helps people get focused and relaxed and re-energized, and has all kinds of things and benefits, and helps them to be better participants in the serious part of the meeting too, and yeah, come up with better answers and more thoughtful answers and things they might not have thought about otherwise. So I do things like improv games, making sculptures. I've done making sculptures out of stuff that's on our desk, making music, whether banging pens or banging on a cup, writing haiku. Haiku, in case you don't remember your English class, or little Japanese poems, 3 lines. They're 5 syllables and 7 and 5 again. And so I did that with a workshop back in April, in March, just when the lockdown had started. We ended up with a whole bunch of haiku on COVID. Clearly that was what was on everyone's mind, but everyone had a different poem too, which was fun and interesting to see what happens. And they're always different. Every person comes up with a different haiku, different something that's on their mind. So, and it only takes a couple of minutes so to do that. Then there are some bigger initiatives that organizations can do. Weekly creativity workshops. They can set up a studio space to run workshops and other arts-based initiatives or interventions. Help people learn creative problem-solving methods and critical thinking. Bring in coaches to how to apply artistic practices and principles to solve business problems in unique and innovative ways. I know a group here that brings a theater person in and leads the group through a 2 or 3 day workshop on creating a play to illustrate the business situation and strategy and visioning, which is quite interesting to see and watch how that evolves. Just coaching people to be more creative and give that space. I love the idea of creating a display area in the office with us all working from home. Maybe that doesn't work. Maybe we create a place on the portal, on our corporate portal, to display artwork and share it, so that people get the idea that this is something that is important to us. It's important to us as people. It's important to organizations to get out of that production line thinking and realize that iteration and trying and failing and doing new things is a good thing. So I think I'm just about on time. We've reached the question part of the webinar, and I'll open it up. We can share the comments from the beginning, the meditation, and any questions.
Stephanie, thank you very much for that. It was quite a change to have that initial meditation component. I'm sure that calmed many individuals. I'm certainly feeling calmer than that, so thank you very much for that. It's something that made a note that I will be attempting to do that more often. So it was a nice change. Thank you for that. I saw to my other screen where I've got some of the questions as they're coming in, so I want to put them to you. Okay. First one is, as a leader, how can you help your team be more creative? How do you promote creativity?
Lead by example. So do some of these things. Do the scroll drive. The slides have some. Bring the slide back up. There's a slide in the end that I've got some resources that you can access. Let me find the slide. but lead by example. Do some of these little things. It doesn't have to be a big thing. The meditation is in the slide deck. The text is in the slide deck. It comes from a book that is well worth reading, called Orbiting the Giant Hairball, A Corporate Fool's Guide to Surviving with Grace. Mm-hmm. It was written by Gordon Mackenzie in 1998. It's an excellent book. If anyone wants more resources, you get in touch with me. But this creative activities for virtual work is a little course that I put together that you can access. There's videos that walk you through how to run the activity. And there's a PDF there that is a resource with all the steps and things there. So it doesn't have to be a big thing, just little, open the space up, give them the space, where's the other slide? Just to give them the space, encourage them to ask questions and challenge the assumptions. And like I said, lead by example. So if somebody says something and you think that's worthy of digging into, ask them what assumptions they're making, ask them why. Start there, start small, and then there's all kinds of things you can do after that, but start small. Little things make a big difference.
I think you touched on a couple of points from one of my favorite books on leadership that's been around for a while, and there are 5 points to leadership, and you touched on 2 of those in there. So model the way is definitely one of those items. Indeed. So here's the next one as I look to my screen on the left as well. To make an organization more creative, should it be led by management? In other words, top-down approach, or we start from the bottom? Top-down versus bottom.
No, these initiatives have to be, there's a role for everyone, and they're top-down and they're bottom-up. So, and we're all leaders and we're all followers, So there's no sitting around waiting for somebody else to do it. You got to do it.
Absolutely. Everyone has a role in being creative and being in charge of their own creativity, but also encouraging those of others in the team. Yep. So, and that's back to your point about model the way. Don't just talk, but walk it as well.
Exactly.
Okay. The next one is why is creativity so undervalued? Is that what's been your interaction, I guess, or understanding, or?
It is, and I have theories on why. We've got it started with the production line and, Henry Ford and that thinking over 100 years ago. We got so embedded in everything's got to be put in a production line. It's got to go A, then B, then C, and it's got to be logical and it's got to be processed. And we've got, there's no, quality control. So it's got no errors and no slack. Slack means you're not doing work. We've got so embedded in this culture. But as times have shifted and the economies and things have shifted to more knowledge work doesn't like that thinking. Knowledge work needs space. It needs to grow. Knowledge is social. We need to talk to people and find out what their experience is. And so our education systems and our organizations haven't caught up with that. They're still stuck in this 100-year-old mentality. So we got to do something about that.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. I think, much of productivity in the beginnings of industrial age was defined by virtue of having people and machines come together. And that's when you started making widgets. It was about production. But now, of course, it's very much about the mind. And, you could have computer and machine together at the same place. But let's say if someone hasn't slept the night before because for whatever reason, they're likely not going to be very productive the following day.
No.
So, I think, very much in the knowledge economy, the creativity assumptions are different and productivity assumptions are very different.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Next one. How can you build your confidence around your creativity if you don't consider yourself to be creative? So confidence around creativity if you don't consider yourself to be creative.
Start small. I always say start small. So, and whatever, and creativity, some people, I took to painting. I was actually a leadership workshop, and that's the first time I painted was in a leadership workshop, not the most obvious place to start painting from. But it's like, oh, I love this. I've got to do more of this. But, and I love to go out and do exhibitions and things. Not everyone needs to do that. So start small. Maybe it's cooking. Maybe that's what your passion is. So start small, try different recipes, or maybe it's gardening. And so try, find some different flowers or do some research and find what you like and come back and always check in with yourself. Well, is this what I like? Does this stick? I tried other creative things before I found painting and fell in love. So yeah, just try things out and try and suspend your judgment. And the important thing is that you tried. I know we say that to our kids, right? But it's true for us too. What's important is that we try. And honestly, if there's people going, well, that doesn't, people look at my painting and go, well, that's not a landscape. Yeah, you're darn right it's not a landscape. And I'm proud of it's not being a landscape. And I'm okay with that. That don't let other people stop us. So if your partner doesn't like what you're doing, maybe you need a new partner.
All right. And the next question is, when you start to ask each team member to draw a picture, say a flower, what do you do with that? Or have them do with it?
They can do whatever they want with it. I would never ask them to draw a flower, for one thing, because we get, there's too much judgment. There's too much, oh, it doesn't look like a flower. Or my flower isn't as good as, no. This is why I do abstract painting, is because it doesn't look like anything. And it's okay that it doesn't look like anything. It looks like whatever meaning I assign to it, And so the drawing activities that I do are all more about doodling and scribbling and just making marks on paper. And the same thing in the painting aspects of my workshop is just about abstract expressionism and getting paint on the canvas. It's not about making it look like a landscape. In fact, if it looks like a landscape, probably you should start again. because that's not, I'm not interested in the representational. It's getting over the hurdle of putting a mark on the page or putting a mark on the canvas and having the confidence of going, oh, the floor doesn't open up and swallow me whole, because I got paint in the wrong place or I made a mess on my page. You know what? Lots of times at the end of my workshops, we take the drawings and bunch them up in a ball and throw them in the garbage on the way out the door. Well, that's perfectly acceptable. So,
I suppose the intent behind that is just to get the creative juices going and getting over that initial hurdle for some people that might be difficult to get over by virtue of having something more creative, something that they wouldn't typically do. So, it doesn't have to be flower, as you said, it could be anything. It could be something that you don't do typically, I suppose.
Yeah. And even if it's, I do the scribble drawings all the time. I do them when I'm here by myself if I don't have time to get my paints out and start. It just changes the energy. It gets me out of my head for a little while, 5 minutes to do a scribble drawing. So it's just about shifting my mind, changing your mind. So. And so many people have bad experiences with art from school, and that's one of the things I like about art, more so than some of the other things that we talk about with creativity and work, Lego serious play and things. People have these bad experiences with art, so it's really energizing and satisfying to see people go, oh, I can do this, I create a safe space in the workshops, and it's okay if you get brown and you're yellow. Life goes on. So, yeah, it's great to see people.
Got a question here. This is a good one. Do you think people are afraid to be creative? It is, and is there an element of riskiness attached to that?
Sure, there is. But anything worthwhile is risky. I think people are afraid of. They've been told, all through school that creativity isn't important, that they're not creative, that they should study, be an accountant, in my case, and there's nothing wrong with accountants, but having some creativity in there is important for the balance, and makes the spreadsheets a whole lot more interesting. So, yeah, I think it's important.
And I think you touched on that in your during your presentation about both sides of the brain, and that reminds me of two things. One, Brock had a great one of their successful campaigns, marketing campaigns, was around Two Sides of the Brain, and there's a good book by Tony Baizan around this area as well, on the area of creativity, which comes to mind. So that's interesting element in there. So I look to my screen on the left as well. So next question is, how can a host of a Zoom room, which is not business oriented, encourage the others in Zoom to interact creatively instead of just talking when it's their turn?
I'm going to come back to what I said before about leading by example. I keep my clown nose by my desk, and that often will start people joking around, and it doesn't have to be a big intervention. We can all do little things. I have some colleagues that are used to me putting my clown nose on, and so they put on the hat and we have a conversation. Or maybe somebody's brought in a new scarf and wraps a scarf around just things that are unexpected that inspires a conversation. I have a deck of cards somewhere too from School of Life that's got all kinds of crazy questions if we're stuck for ideas. But yeah, usually. So there's all kinds of ways.
Thank you for that, Stephanie. And that reminds me of when you say having a note or something. So with technology, one of the nice things about this is that you could have your emojis, or that reminds me of one of our colleagues from Brock, who also led one of the sessions here on AR marketing, Professor Johann Schultz. And in one of the meetings I had with him prior to that, I think he had a virtual cat sitting, I think, on his shoulder or around his face, somewhere that could be seen, and he had a full character for him. It had a name. It would purr every once in a while. It would move. It was definitely creative. It was something different. So I guess that's something about technology there, that we can do that now in this setting than we would have been able to otherwise.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Imaginary pets.
Mm-hmm. Well, Stephanie, it feels like we could go on chatting, and there are a number of questions coming in here as well, but we are coming to the end of our allotted time. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule in the evening where you are in Berlin, Germany, and coming to us and presenting on this exciting topic. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank all of those, our audience, for taking the time, taking a break, and joining us here today and listening to Stephanie and I chatting through these items, but importantly, hearing the work around creativity with Stephanie on this. There are some contact details that Stephanie has posted on the screen now. If you need to get in touch, by all means, do so. And of course, you can get in touch with us here at Goodman Group at Brock University as well. Next week, we will be joined by Leslie Calvin on a session on emotional intelligence, in particular, positive forward motion in COVID era and maximizing emotionally effective leadership in the fast lane. I think it's a very relevant topic in this area and in this time and age to have this. So that next Wednesday the 28th, from 11 to 11:45. And if you're interested in diving deeper in this area, on the next slide, we have information for you about a program, a more in-depth dive into emotional intelligence. It's a 2-day session taking place in November, 19th and 20th of November, for you to have a deeper dive in the area of emotional intelligence in the age of COVID. And that session is led by Leslie Calvin, and you can see the details around on the screen. So the seats for this virtual session has been going very fast. We are already more than 50% of the seats have been reserved, and the rest of them seem to be going at a pretty fast pace. So I would encourage you to reserve your seat and register for the program at your earliest convenience. And for that session coming up on the 19th and 20th of November. And the preamble to this, is taking place next week. So feel free to join us next week so you can get a sampling of what to anticipate in a couple of a few weeks thereafter. I hope to see many of you next week on the October 28th at 11. Until then, stay well and stay safe.